PAS 33. Class, our topic for today is earnings per share or EPS. Our reference for this topic is PAS 33. Earnings per share or EPS represents the amount of income that each share earns. So basically, when you say EPS, ito yung amount na ma-earn ng isang shareholder per share. Alright? Now, EPS computation is required for publicly listed entities or yung mga companies na listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange. Okay? Now, EPS is specifically presented in the Statement of Comprehensive Income or Income Statement. Di ba meron tayong revenues, expenses, and sa baba meron tayong net income. Okay? And below net income, doon natin pinapresent yung EPS. Okay, sir, bakit ba tayo nagko-compute ng EPS? Well, it has two primary uses. Number one, EPS is a measure of an entity's performance. The higher the EPS, the better. Okay? Kasi class, kapag mataas yung EPS, it means mas profitable yung company. Okay? So, yun yung first use niyan. Measure performance. Number two is, EPS is used in the determination of over or undervalued companies or stocks. So, ano ibig sabihin yan? Let's have an illustration. For example, meron tayong two companies na listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange, ABC and XYZ. Let's say comparable sila. Magkamukha sila ng size, ng nature of operations, etc. And for example, ang EPS ni ABC is 10 pesos per share and EPS of XYZ is 12 pesos per share. Now, masasabi natin class na si ABC is undervalued. Okay? Because mas mababa yung EPS niya. Ang gagawin natin as investor, bibili natin yung stocks ni ABC and once yung 10 pesos per share, maging 12 pesos siya, doon natin ibebenta yung stocks natin kay ABC. Alright? Buy low, sell high. Now, EPS applies to ordinary shares. Okay? Hindi siya applicable sa preference shares. Bakit, sir? Because again, kapag preferred shares, meron entitled sila sa fixed dividends. Usually, percentage yan. So, kahit gano'ng kalaki yung income, fixed rate yung marireceive ng mga preferred shareholders. Ulitin ko, EPS only applies to ordinary shareholders. Okay? Now, PAS 33 requires us to compute for two types of EPS. Basic EPS and diluted EPS. Let's start with basic EPS. Yung formula natin for basic EPS, net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Analyze natin yung formula. Sa numerator muna tayo, net income minus preferred dividends. Sir, bakit tayo nagma-minus ng preferred dividends? Because ang makukuha natin dito, class, pag minus natin yan, is the income available to ordinary shareholders. Okay? Ulitin ko, EPS, pang ordinary shareholders lang yan. So, pag may net income tayo, alam natin class, babayaran muna natin yung dividends ni preferred shareholders. Okay, after that, pwede tayong magbigay ng dividends to ordinary shareholders. Kaya, net income, nagma-minus tayo ng preferred dividends. And very important, yung rules natin for preferred dividends. If cumulative, we deduct the preferred dividends whether declared or not. Okay? If non-cumulative, we deduct the preferred dividends only if declared. Okay, so ito yung rules natin for preferred dividends. Sir, paano namin maaalala yan? Naalala nyo ba class kapag cumulative, ibig sabihin yan, pag hindi nabayaran yung dividends ngayon, sa preferred shareholders, nagiging dividends in arrears siya. Tama? Yung dividends in arrears, babayaran mo yan in the future. Okay? So ibig sabihin class, kapag cumulative, whether mag-declare or not ng dividends, babayaran mo pa rin yan. It's either this year or kung kailan ka mag-distribute ng dividends. Okay? Kaya pag cumulative, whether declared or not, ima-minus natin yung preferred dividends. Kapag naman non-cumulative, and then hindi nag-declare this year, forfeited na yan. Okay? Wala kang dividends in arrears. So that's why, magma-minus ka lang kapag non-cumulative if mag-declare ng dividends. Gets? Okay. Denominator natin is number of outstanding shares. Alam natin class, pag outstanding, issued, plus subscribe, minus treasury shares. Alam natin yung computation ng outstanding shares. Now, if there are significant changes in number of shares during the year. For example, class, during the year, nag-issue ng additional shares. Mga ganyan. Ang gagamitin natin dyan is the weighted average number of shares or WAVE. Okay? And also, if there are instances na, for example, meron tayong mga stock dividends or stock split. Okay, later, papakita ko sa inyo na ang effect nito is retroactive. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, maapektuhan niya yung mga previous na issue natin na shares. Ang tawag dyan, meron tayong increase in shares without consideration. Okay? Bakit sir may increase in shares? Well, syempre, pag may stock dividends or stock split, dadami yung shares. Pero bakit no consideration or without consideration? Kasi wala naman tayo marireceive na cash kapag may stock dividends or stock split. Okay? So, ulitin ko. Denominator, outstanding shares. Kapag may significant changes during the year, weighted average. Kapag may stock dividends, stock split, retroactive yung effect niya. Okay? So, apply muna natin yung concepts class by answering our illustrative examples. Let's go to illustrative example number 1. Basic EPS muna tayo. Okay? Sige. Requirement is compute for the basic EPS. So, sulat agad natin yung formula. Net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Let's read the given. One class of share capital, let's say ordinary shares muna. Wala muna tayong preferred shares. Okay? Pinnacle company reported net income of 2.8 million. So, 2.8 million Again, wala naman tayong preferred shares, so zero agad yung preferred dividends natin. The entity has only one class of share capital, 50,000 ordinary shares with par value of 100 pesos. Net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares, nalagay dyan 50,000. Let's compute for the EPS, 2.8 million. Divide by 50,000, you have 56 pesos. Okay, so 56 pesos, yun yung EPS natin for illustrative example number 1. So, ang interpretation yan per share, okay, ang i-expect natin, makakapag-generate siya ng 56 pesos, okay, per share. Again, pipresent natin yan in the statement of comprehensive income. Let's go to illustrative example number 2. Let's say naman class, meron tayong preferred shares. Okay, tingnan natin, meron tayong preferred dividends. Requirement is compute for the basic EPS. Mr. Accounting Company had the following capital structure during 2025 and 2026. Well, sulat agad natin yung formula. No? Net income, yun unong gagawin. Sulat may formula. Minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay. Preference share, 10 peso par, 6% cumulative. Okay, nalagay cumulative. Ano yung sabi ko kanina? Whether declared or not, kapag cumulative, ima-minus mo yan. Kasi kapag hindi nag-declare ngayon, magiging dividends in arrears. Babayaran mo pa rin yan in the future, na-delay lang. Okay? So, compute natin class yung dividend. So, 500,000 yung preference shares, 6% down. Na-compute nyo ba yung 30,000? Yes. Okay, so lagay mo dyan, preferred dividends, 30,000. Ordinary shares, 10 peso par, 200,000 shares issued and outstanding. Yan yung denominator natin. And Mr. Accounting reported net income of 1.2 million. So, 1.2 million minus na-compute natin na preferred dividends, 30,000. Alright? Over number of outstanding shares, tama ba? 200,000 yung ordinary shares natin. So, let's compute. 1.2 million minus 30,000 divided by 200,000. Sagot mo na dito class is 5.85. Okay, yun yung final answer natin. Basahin ulit natin yung second paragraph. Mr. Accounting reported net income of 1.2 million for the year. Mr. Accounting paid no preferred dividends during 2025 and paid 15,000 in preferred dividends during 2026. Okay, bago ko makalimutan, yung preferred dividends sa to class, take note na always current year lang yan. Okay, worth 1 year lang yan. Huwag mo ima-minus yung dividends in arrears. Sa book value per share lang applicable yun. Kapag EPS, tandaan mo class, always 1 year worth lang yung preferred dividends. Kaya dito nakalagay, Mr. Accounting paid no preferred dividends during 2025. Okay, yung 2025, huwag mo yung minus yun. Dapat always 1 year lang. Okay? Eh sir, bakit yun? Nakalagay dyan, paid 15,000 in preferred dividends during 2026. Tama ba class? 30,000 yung should be. Okay? Ang binayaran lang is 15,000. Well, yung difference na 15,000 dividends in arrears yun, babayaran yung next year. Okay? Ang lalagay mo dito, yung should be for 1 year. Hindi yung actual na binayaran ha. Kung magkaiba sila, yung should be na 1 year. Dito. So, lagay ko 1 year. Ayan, para malinaw. Huwag mo ilalagay, huwag mo imamayos yung dividends in arrears. Okay? Isang taon lang. Sige, let's go to number 3. Weighted average number of shares. Again, kapag may mga significant changes during the year, okay? Denominator mo, wave yung gagamitin natin. Okay, so sir, paano compute niya? Tingnan natin class. Compute for the basic EPS. Illustrative example number 3. CPA company had the following ordinary share transactions during the year. January 1, ordinary shares outstanding, 200,000. So gagamitin natin kung ilang months yan outstanding. Okay, so ganito siya computing class. 200,000 times, di ba, January 1 yan. So kung meron tayong times 12 over 12. Okay, next, issued a 10% stock dividend. Sabi ko kanina, kapag may stock split or stock dividends, retroactive effect niyan. Ibig sabihin, yung previous years previous na shares natin, affected yan. Ilang percent? 10%. So, gagawin ko dyan, multiply ko by 1.1. Kasi 10% or 110%, 1.1 yan. Next, acquired treasury shares. So, pag treasury shares, negative yan. Okay, wag positive ha, baka magkamali ka. So, 12,000 times, kailan in-acquire yan? May 1. So, May 2, December is 8 over 12. Next, June 1, issued shares in business combination. So 60,000, again, prorate natin or using number of months. Okay, June 2, December is 7 over 12. Next is issued shares for cash, August 1. So 30,000 times August to December, that's 5 over 12. Issued a 2-for-1 share split. So again, pag share split, retroactive effect yan. 2-for-1, multiply natin by 2 lahat. So, pati yung mga previous natin, times 2, times 2, times 2, times 2. Okay, yung ibig sabihin ng retroactive. Okay? Next, reissued treasury shares. So, bumili tayo ng treasury shares dito, ni-reissue natin, so positive na yan. Okay? So 6,000 times 1 over 12. Okay, so let's compute class, yung weighted average number of shares. So basically, ito yung magiging denominator natin. 200,000 times 12 over 12 times 1.1 times 2. You get here 440,000. Next natin, 12,000 times 8 over 12 times 2. You have 16,000. Pero negative to. Okay, kasi treasury shares yan. Next natin, 60,000 times 7 over 12 times 2. You get 70,000. Next, 30,000 times 5 over 12 times 2. You get 25,000. And last one, we have 6,000 times 1 over 12, you have 500. Okay? Let's compute for the weighted average number of shares. 440,000 minus 16 plus 70,000 plus 25,000 plus 500, you have 519,500. Final answer, 519,500. Basically, yun yung gagamitin mo ng denominator. Okay? Sa EPS computation natin. Let's go to illustrative example number 4. Illustrative example number 4, compute for the basic EPS. Okay? BSA company had 50,000, 10 peso par, 6% cumulative preferred shares. Pag cumulative, whether declared or not, compute na natin agad class yung preferred dividends. So 50,000 times 10 times 6%, lagay mo dyan, preferred dividends, 30,000. Okay, BSA reported net income of 1.2 million for the year. So sulat ko agad, sabi dyan, basic EPS, net income, minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay, so gawin natin, meron given na net income sa problem, nalagay 1.2 million. Preferred dividends, so compute natin earlier, 30,000 divided by yung number of outstanding shares natin. Now, the movements in number of ordinary shares, okay, so meron tayong mga significant changes. Gagamitin natin dyan is wave. Okay, so gawin natin, meron daw 180,000 shares, January 1, 180,000 times 12 over 12. Next is 30,000 issued for cash, April 1, so April to December, that's times 9 over 12. Okay, subscribe, 10,000 times 6 over 12. Kahit subscribe pa lang, kasama yan. Kasi again, pag outstanding shares, issued plus subscribe minus treasury shares. Reacquisition or treasury shares, negative yan, 20,000 times October, November, December, 3 over 12. Okay, so let's compute. 180,000 times 12 over 12, that's 180,000. 30,000 times 9 over 12. 30,000 times 9 over 12, that gives you 22,500. Okay, 10,000 times 6 over 12, that's 5,000. 20,000 times 3 over 12, you have negative 5,000. Okay, now, compute natin dito class. Let's compute. 180,000 plus 22,500 plus 5,000 minus 5,000, you have 202,500. Okay, weighted average number of shares, yun yung lagay natin sa denominator. Let's compute 1.2 million minus 30,000 divided by 202,500, you get 5.78. Okay, final answer for illustrative example number 4, 5.78. Okay. Now, jump tayo to main problems 1 and 2. Okay? Main problem 1 muna tayo. Apply muna natin class yung basic EPS computation sa multiple choice. Okay? Main problem number 1. Okay, that's really given. Marilyn Inc. had 20,000 shares of common stock or ordinary shares outstanding on January 1. On May 1, it issued 10,500 shares of common stock. Outstanding all year were 10,000 shares of non-convertible preferred stock, on which a dividend of 40 pesos per share. Okay, so computin natin yun. How much yung preferred dividends natin? 10,000 shares times 40. Tama ba class? 400,000 yung preferred dividends. Net income was 967,000. Okay, ganito gagawin ko dyan. How much daw yung EPS? So net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income natin in the problem is 967,000. Na-compute natin ang dividends, 400,000. And then, compute natin yung weighted average number of shares. Sabi niya sa first sentence, meron daw siyang 20,000 shares. Outstanding January 1 times 12 over 12, so that's 20,000. And then, nag-issue ng 10,500 noong May 1, so May to December is 8 over 12. Okay, 10,500 times 8 over 12, you have 7,000. Okay, now, weighted average number of shares natin, 27,000. Lagay natin siya sa denominator. Net income of 967,000 minus preferred dividends of 400,000 divided by 27,000 weighted average number of shares, you get 21. Okay, final answer for main problem number 1 is, 21. Let's go to main problem number 2. Okay, what is the weighted average number of shares? So, parang ginawa lang natin kanina. Okay, ito lang din siya. An entity had 100,000 ordinary shares issued and outstanding at the beginning of current year. Okay, so unahin natin yun. 100,000 times 12 over 12 is equal to 100, times 12 over 12. Okay, next. During the year, the entity revealed the following ordinary share transactions. April 1, issued 30,000 previously unissued shares. So 30,000. April to December, that's 9 over 12. Okay, next. June 30, purchased 10,000 shares. Negative yan kasi treasury shares. Times 6 over 12. And then, distributed 20% stock dividends or 1.2 kapag ganyan, 20%. Retroactive effect times 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2. Next, split the stock 3 for 1 o times 3 tayo. Retroactive din yan, times 3 times 3 times 3. Let's compute. Okay, 100,000 times 12 over 12 times 1.2 times 3, you have 300. Okay, times 2. Okay. Sige, split the share. Yung split the share 2 for 1. Di pa natin ako-consider pala yun. Yung May 1, okay, nakita mo yung May 1, split the share 2 for 1. So, dapat may times 2 tayo dito. Okay, retroactive effect. Hindi pa natin ako-consider yun. Ulitin natin. 100,000 times 12 over 12 times 2 because of the stock split times 1.2 times 3, you have 20,000. 720,000. 30,000 times 9 over 12 times 1.2 times 3, you have 81,000. Okay? Sorry, kasama may times 2 kapag dito. Lihin natin class para malinaw, no? Nalito kayo. So, basahin natin ulit yung given. An entity had 100,000 ordinary shares outstanding beginning of the year. 100,000 times 12 over 12. Okay, next. April 1, issued 30,000. Previously unissued shares. April to December times 9 over 12. Next, split the share 2 for 1. Ayun, may multiply tayo by 2 kasi retroactive effect yan. Next, purchase 10,000 ordinary for treasury shares. Negative yan kasi treasury shares times 6 over 12. Next, distributed 20% stock dividends times 1.2 times 1.2 times 1.2. Split the stock 3 for 1 times 3 times 3 times 3. Okay, so let's compute. 100,000 times 12 over 12 times 2 times 1.2 times 3, you have 720,000. Next, 30,000 times 9 over 12 times 2 times 1.2 times 3, you have 162,000. And then last one, negative yan. 10,000 times 6 over 12 times 1.2 times 3. Okay, times 6 over 12 times 1.2 times 3, you have 18,000. Okay, let's compute for the number weighted average number of shares. So 120,000 plus 162,000 minus 18,000, you have 864,000. Final answer for main problem number 2, boy, 864,000. Okay. Now, balik tayo sa illustrative example. Let's go to illustrative example number 5. Okay. Illustrative example number 5, pakita ko sa inyo class kapag what if naman may net loss. Okay? Mag-compute pa rin tayo dyan. Now, instead of earnings per share, ang term na gagamitin natin is loss per share. So kahit loss per share yan, kailangan compute pa rin natin. Okay? Represent pa rin natin yan in the statement of comprehensive income. Let's go to illustrative example number 5. Illustrative example number 5. Tingnan natin kung paano mag-compute ng loss, basic loss per share. Okay, let's read the given. ABC company had the following ordinary share activity during the year. So meron tayong outstanding shares, January 1, new shares issued. So basically, mag-compute tayo ng wave. Okay? The entity had 100,000 cumulative preference shares outstanding during the year. The preference share has a par value of 50 pesos and 12% dividend rate. Computing nga natin class yung preferred dividends. Meron tayong 100,000 times 50, yung par value times 0.12. Lagay mo dyan, preferred dividends, 600,000. Okay? Compute for the basic loss per share. Well, net income, or in this case, net loss minus preferred dividends over number of shares. Tama ba class? Sa problem nakalagay dyan, meron daw net loss na 2690,000. Siyempre, net loss yan, negative yan. Okay? Negative 2690,000. And then, na-compute natin yung preferred dividends earlier, 600,000. Okay? Over yung weighted average number of shares. Well, compute natin yung wave. Sabi dyan, meron tayong 150,000 January 1 na shares times 12 over 12. Next is new shares issued, 30,000 May 1 times 8 over 12. Kasi from May to December, 8 months yan, 8 over 12. July 1 treasury shares, so meron tayong negative 12,000 times 6 over 12. And then treasury shares resold or reissued, 6,000 times 1 over 12. Let's compute. So meron tayong 150,000. And then 30,000 times 8 over 12. Okay, we have 20,000. 12,000 times 6 over 12, meron tayong negative 6,000. And 6,000 times 1 over 12, we have 500. Okay, let's compute for the weighted average number of shares, 150,000, 20,000, minus 6,000 plus 500, you have 164,500. Okay, lagyan sa denominator, 164,500. Plus, how much yung numerator natin? 2690,000. Pa-plus mo yan kasi pareho negative. Okay? Plus 600,000, you have negative 3290,000. Negative 3290,000, i-divide natin by 164,500. Yung basic loss per share natin is 20 pesos per share. Okay? Gawin lang siya. I-add mo yung dalawa na yan. Okay? Pero negative sila. Okay? Kasi pareho silang negative. We're done with basic EPS. Let's now move on to diluted EPS. Diluted EPS is applicable whenever an entity's capital structure is complex. Sir, tuwing kailan naging complex yung capital structure of an entity? Whenever there are dilutive securities. Okay? Dilutive securities are securities or instruments that will decrease our earnings per share. Okay? Meron tayong 3 examples of dilutive securities. Convertible preference shares, convertible bonds, and options or warrants. Isa-isahin natin later yan. Okay? Now, the goal of diluted EPS is to show the lowest possible EPS. So basically, ipapakita natin sa mga ordinary shareholders kung ano yung worst case scenario o how much yung ma-earn ng shares nila. Alright? Now, in computing diluted EPS, ang i-apply natin dito class is the as-if approach. As-if approach. Okay? Hypothetical yung gagawin natin computation. Okay? Sa basic EPS, tandaan nyo class, actual yan. Actual na nangyari. Sa diluted EPS, as-if. Hypothetical scenarios to. Right? Isa-isay natin. Start mo tayo with convertible preference shares. Pag sabi mo convertible preference shares, yung preference shares, pwede natin i-convert into ordinary shares. Okay? Ano yung as-if scenario dyan? As-if, i-convert lahat ng preference shares at the start of the year. Okay? Now, ano yung effect yan sa computation ng EPS natin? To recall, yung formula natin for EPS, net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay? Tama ba class kapag inassume natin na January 1, kinonvert na yung preference shares into ordinary shares, wala tayong preference shares sa December 31. Therefore, wala na tayong preferred dividends. So, magiging effect niyan, 0 na yung preferred dividends natin. Tama lang? Now, doon naman tayo sa convertible bonds. So, yung si convertible bonds, yung bonds, pwede i-convert into ordinary shares. Again, yung as if dito, as if converted yung bonds on January 1. Right? So, ano ulit yung formula? Net income minus preferred dividends over number of shares. Ano naman yung effect niyan? Tama ba class? Kung kinonvert mo yung bonds dito, wala ka ng interest expense, no interest expense from January 1 to December 31. Tama ba yun? Now, yung net income niyan is after interest expense. So, kailangan i-add back natin yan. Gagawin mo dito, add back, interest expense, pero net of tax. Okay? Sir, back net of tax. Because, syempre, net income, net of tax naman talaga yan. After tax yan. So, dito ko class, if yung convertible bonds, inassume natin na January 1, kinonvert siya, wala ka ng bonds. Tama? Therefore, wala ka dapat interest expense all throughout the year. Kaya nangyari, since yung net income is after interest expense, i-add back natin yan, pero don't forget na net of tax yan. Tandaan nyo class, kapag diluted EPS, again, hypothetical scenarios yan, as if yan, gusto lang natin pakita yung worst case scenario sa mga ordinary shareholders. Yung basic EPS, actual yan. Alright? So yeah, so yun muna, apply muna natin yan, later balikan natin yung options or warrants. Let's go to illustrative example number 6. Pakita ko sa inyo kung paano yung convertible preference shares. Okay?
Requirement is compute for the basic and diluted EPS. So both ko compute natin. Pinnacle Company had the following capital structure during 2025. Convertible preference shares, 10 peso par, 6% cumulative, 50,000 shares issued and outstanding. Computing nga natin class yung preferred dividends. Tama ba? 500,000 times 6%. So lagay mo dyan, preferred dividends, 30,000. Now, ordinary shares, 200,000 shares issued and outstanding. Each preference share is convertible into 2 ordinary shares. So 1:2. Net income is 1.2 million. So ganito gagawin ko dyan class. Doon muna tayo sa basic EPS. Basic EPS natin is net income, okay, minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares, okay? So how much yung net income natin dito? According to the last sentence, 1.2 million. And then yung preferred dividends natin is 30,000 over number of ordinary shares. Nakita nyo yung 200,000? Okay, so let's compute the basic EPS, 1.2 million minus 30,000. Divide natin by 200,000. Sagot mo dyan class, basic EPS is 5.85. Okay, so very straightforward. Walang problema dyan. Doon tayo sa diluted EPS. Diluted EPS, lagyan natin yung formula, net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Ano sabi ko kayo na class? As if converted at the start. Okay? So gagawin ko dyan, meron tayong net income in the problem. Again, it's 1.2 million. Tama ba yung preferred dividends natin? Zero na yan. Kasi kung convert mo yan sa start of the year, okay, wala nang preferred dividends. Tama? Lahat kasi ordinary shares na. Tama? So lagay ko dito, zero. And number of shares natin, meron tayong 200,000 and kapag kinonvert, okay, as if kinonvert lahat ng preferred shares to ordinary shares, punta ka doon class sa second paragraph, each preference share is convertible into 2 ordinary shares. Ilan ba lahat ng preference shares? 50,000. Nakita mo yan? 50,000 times 2, that's 100,000. Okay, so this is 50,000 times 2. Alright. So, gagawin ko dyan, 1.2 million. And then yung denominator natin is 300,000. Divided by 300,000. Sagot natin dito class. Diluted EPS natin is 4 pesos per share. Okay? Now, take note class na yung diluted EPS natin is always or should always be lower than the basic EPS. Bakit sir? Kasi nga, syempre lowest possible EPS yung gusto natin i-compute. Hindi pwede maging mataas si diluted EPS than basic EPS. So ulitin ko, kapag convertible preference shares, tanggalin mo lang yung preferred dividends, and then as if kinonvert 1:2, 50,000 yung preference shares times 2, 100,000. Okay? Sige, jump tayo class sa main problem number 3. Okay, kasi yun yung related problem, no? Main problem number 3, still convertible preference shares. Tignan natin. Main problem number 3. Okay, what amount should be reported as diluted EPS for 2021? 2021 yung hinahanap sa atin. An entity reported the following capital structure. So meron tayong 2021 and 2022. Okay. Ordinary shares 110,000, convertible preference shares 10,000. During 2021, the entity paid preferred dividends of 3 pesos per share. Okay. Tama ba? 3 times ilan lahat ng preference shares? 10,000. So 3 times 10,000, that's 30,000 of preferred dividends. The preference shares are convertible into 20,000 ordinary shares. Net income is 850,000. Ganito gagawin ko class. Diluted EPS yung tanong sa atin, tama? Diluted EPS is equal to net income. So that ko muna yung formula lagi. Net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income in the problem, given siya, that is 850,000. Pero wala na akong preferred dividends. Kasi nga, as if kinonvert lahat yan. Okay, number of outstanding shares natin, meron tayong 110,000 na outstanding shares. As if kinonvert lahat ng preference shares, 10,000 times 3, that's 30. Oh, sorry. That is, ilan ba yung conversion dito? Preference shares are convertible into 20,000 ordinary shares. So dapat 20,000 pa. So that's 20,000. So yung denominator natin is 130,000. Okay, 850,000 divided by 130,000, you have 6.54. Final answer for main problem number 3 is boy 6.54. Okay. Balik tayo class dun sa illustrative example number 7. Illustrative example number 7, ganun pa rin siya, convertible preference shares, but this time, ang ginawa dito class, kinonvert siya, may actual conversion. O, papakita ko sa inyo, what if may actual conversion? Ano yung effect niya sa EPS natin? Okay? Sige, illustrative example number 7. Compute for the following basic EPS and diluted EPS. On January 1, 2025, Mr. Accounting Company had 200,000, 50 peso par value ordinary shares outstanding. So, underline me 200,000. In addition, on January 1, the entity had issued 30,000 non-convertible, cumulative 10% preference shares with a 100 peso par value. Compute natin yung preferred dividends. Tama ba? Gagawin ko dyan, 30,000. Now, preference shares times 100 par value, and then multiply ko by 10%. Lagay mo dyan class, preferred dividends, 300,000. Okay? These preference shares were converted on September 1. Okay, each preference share was converted into 5 ordinary shares. So kung merong 5, okay, so parang ganito nangyari dyan. Tama ba class? Ganito nangyari dyan. So meron tayong January 1, meron tayong September 1 and December 31. Tama ba nag-convert dito? Tama. Ilan yan? 30,000 daw yung preference shares convertible into 5 ordinary shares. So that's 150,000 ordinary shares. Yun yung actual na nangyari. Right? Each preference share was converted into 5 ordinary shares. The preference dividends for the entire year were paid in full before conversion. Net income was 5 million. Ano sabi ko kayo na class? Pag basic EPS, sabi ko kayo na kapag basic EPS, actual yan. Okay? This is actual. Pag diluted EPS, hypothetical. Okay? So ano yung actual na nangyari? Basic EPS, net income, minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income natin in the problem, how much na nakalagay dyan? Last sentence, 5 million. Minus preferred dividends. Earlier, na-compute natin yung preferred dividends, 300,000. Okay, minus number of outstanding shares. Siyempre, nagkaroon ng actual conversion, wave yung gagamitin natin. Let's compute for wave. Okay, so beginning of the year, tama ba? Meron tayong 200,000 shares. Tama? 200,000 times 12 over 12, that's 200,000. And then, nagkaroon tayo ng conversion, 150,000. Okay, times September, October, November, December times 4 over 12. Okay, 150,000 times 4 over 12, you get 50,000. Okay, tama ba class? Yung wave natin is 250,000. And yung gagamitin mo na denominator in your basic EPS, 5 million. Net income minus preferred dividends of 300,000. Divide by 250,000, you get here 18.8 basic EPS. So ginawa natin, yung actual na nangyari. Ano yung actual na nangyari? May conversion no September 1. Effect niyan, yung weighted average. Okay? Yung ginawa natin, denominator, 18.8. Net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Dito na may complication yan. Diluted EPS. Again, ano yung assumption natin in diluted EPS? As if converted at the start of the year. Kahit class merong conversion sa September 1. Okay? Kahit may conversion sa September 1, ang assumption pa rin natin, kinonvert siya sa January 1. Kaya sabi ko kanina kapag diluted EPS, hypothetical scenario yan. Okay? So sir, paano mangyayari dyan? Ganito gagawin ko dyan class. Tama ba? Dyan kinonvert. Okay? Pag diluted EPS. So lagay ko yung formula dito. Diluted EPS, net income, minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay? Net income natin in the problem is 5 million. Kung kinonvert siya at the start of the year, wala kang preferred dividends. Okay? Zero yan. Okay? Lagay ko minus 0. And then, number of shares natin, tama ba class, meron tayong 200,000 na shares, beginning, okay, plus, tama ba class, kung kinonvert mo dito yan, 30,000 times 5, meron kang 150,000 ordinary shares yan. Outstanding siya for the entire year. Tama kasi as if, January 1 siya kinonvert, okay? So, lagay mo dito, plus 150,000. So, this is, denominator natin, 350,000. 5 million, wala kang preferred dividends kasi assumption, kinonvert sa start, divide mo siya sa 350,000, sagot mo dito class, 14.29. Diluted EPS natin, for use of example number 7, 14.29. Kanya gagawin mo class kapag may actual conversion in the problem. Sige. Let's go to illustrative example number 8. Illustrative example number 8. This is about convertible bonds. Ano ulit yung concept natin for convertible bonds? It's as if kinonvert natin at the start of the year. Okay, kinonvert natin at the start of the year. Ano yung effect ulit nun? Kung kinonvert mo at the start of the year, wala kang interest expense. Okay? Pero syempre, hypothetical yun. Yung actual na net income na given sa atin is after interest expense. Kailangan mo siyang i-add back kasi as if walang bonds and then net of tax because yung net income natin is net of tax. Okay? So, ganun siya. Let's read the given. Requirement is compute for the basic and diluted EPS. Illustrative example number 8. Okay. CPA company had the following instruments outstanding all throughout 2025. 10% convertible bonds payable issued at face amount. Each 1,000 peso bond is convertible into 30 ordinary shares. Ordinary shares, 10 peso par, 200,000 shares issued and outstanding, and then may net income tayo na 1.2 million, tax rate is 30%. Doon mo tayo sa basic EPS. So at yung formula, basic EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Tama? Number of shares ang lagay. Number of shares. Net income natin in the problem is 1.2 million. Wala namang preferred dividends wala namang preference shares sa given sa problem. So zero yung preferred dividends natin. Over number of outstanding shares, 20,000. Okay? 1.2 million. Divide by 20,000, you have 60 pesos over basic. 1.2 million over 200,000. You have basic EPS natin is 6 pesos. Okay, so yun yung basic EPS natin. Alright, very straightforward. Okay? Yung diluted EPS, dito na yung may konting complication. Lagyan natin yung formula, net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Ngayon, kung as if kinonvert siya sa start of the year, yung net income natin na 1.2 million, syempre, after interest yan Add back natin. Okay, so compute natin yung interest expense, tama ba class? 4 million, yung face amount ng bonds, multiply natin by 10%. Multiply natin by 70% kasi dapat, bakit 70%? Kasi sabi ko, after tax dapat yan. Kung makakalimutan net of tax. Because yung net income, alam naman natin class na after tax yan. Kaya i-add back mo na interest expense should also be after tax. 4 million times 10% times 0.7 para after tax siya, you have 280,000. Okay. And then, yung number of shares natin, tama ba class? Meron tayong 200,000 plus, as if kinonvert, so lagay ko din computation. Sabi dyan, 10% convertible bonds. Each 1,000 peso bond is convertible into 30 ordinary shares. So gagawin ko dyan, 4 million yung total bonds, divide ko sa 1,000, and then multiply ko siya by 30 para makuha ko kailan yung number of yung ordinary shares natin. 4 million, divide by 1,000 times 30, you have 120,000. Okay? So, yung denominator natin is 320,000. Sige, so 1.2 million net income, add back interest expense 280, divide yan sa denominator na 320,000, answer mo dito class, 4.625. This is our diluted EPS. Again, this should always be lower than your basic EPS. Let's go to illustrative example number 9. What if yung bonds, in-issue siya during the period, hindi January 1? So, paano mangyayari dyan, sir? Okay, let's compute for the basic and diluted EPS. XYZ company had 200,000 ordinary shares outstanding on January 1. On July 1, 2025, XYZ issued 5,000 convertible 10% bonds with 1,000 peso face amount. So, July 1, nagkaroon ng issuance of bonds. The bonds were convertible into 100,000 ordinary shares. XYZ had no other potentially dilutive securities. Net income is 1.2 million. Income tax rate is 30%. Tama ba, class? Kung gagawa tayo ng timeline, dito yung January 1, this is July 1, and this is December 31. Tama ba dito nagkaroon ng issuance of bonds? Tama? Now, let's compute for the basic EPS. Basic EPS is equal to net income, like yung formula, minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income natin in the problem is 1.2 million. Wala naman tayong preferred dividends. Number of outstanding shares natin, based on the first sentence, 200,000, 1.2 million divided by 200,000, that is 6. Very straightforward. Again, kapag basic EPS, actual na nangyari yan. Hindi yan hypothetical. Doon tayo sa diluted EPS. Diluted EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Now, as if kinonvert siya, okay? Kailan siya as if kinonvert? January 1 or July 1? No, siyempre July 1. Diyan siya inisyu eh. Okay? So, it's either January 1 or if later siya inisyu. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, class, ano mangyayari dito dyan, yung interest expense na, tama ba? July 1 ba? July 1. Yes, tama naman. Tama? July 1 siya inisyu. Okay? So, ang mangyayari dyan, class, tama ba yung net income natin na 1.2 million, okay, is after interest expense for 6 months. 6 months lang, tama? Yung interest expense natin, kung kailan inisyu yung bonds. Okay, so July 1 to December 31, that's for 6 months. So, ang gagawin ko dyan, yung i-add ba ko na interest expense, kukumpitin ko, 1.2 million plus, tama ba, 5,000, okay, times 1,000, kasi 5,000 bonds daw, face amount is 1,000. And then, ang gagawin ko dyan, multiply ko by ilang percent? 10%. Multiply ko by 70% para net of tax. Multiply ko by 6 over 12. Kasi, in-issue siya, July 1. Huwag 12 over 12 ba? Kasi July 1 in-issue, okay? So, 5,000 times 1,000 times 10%. Times 70% times 6 over 12, you get here 175,000. Okay. Denominator naman natin, 200,000. Meron tayo niyan. Plus, as if kinonvert, nakalagay dyan, convertible into 100,000 ordinary shares. So, ganito yung plus. Yung 100,000 natin, tandaan mo, dapat comparable yan. Apples to apples yan. Kung nag 6 over 12 ka sa interest expense, mag 6 over 12 ka rin dyan. Okay? Kasi nga, as if kinonvert mo siya noong July 1. Huwag 100,000 gagamitin mo. 100,000 times 6 over 12. Nakuha niyo ba yun? So, this is 50,000. So, denominator natin is 250,000. Ulitin ko, class. Yung in-add back natin na interest expense is for 6 months. Yung nilagay natin na shares as if converted, prorate mo siya times 6 over 12 then. 1.2 million plus 175,000 divided by 250,000, you get here 5.5. Diluted EPS, 5.5. Okay? That's for illustrative example number 9. Let's go to illustrative example number 10. Okay? Illustrative example number 10. Ganun pa rin, pero merong actual conversion. Okay? Ano gagawin natin dyan, sir? Sige, requirement compute for the basic and diluted EPS. The EF company had 200,000 ordinary shares outstanding on January 1. In addition, as of January 1, the entity had issued 5,000 convertible 10% bonds with 1,000 peso face amount. These bonds are convertible into 100,000 ordinary shares. So, underline mo yan. DEF had no other potentially dilutive securities. The bonds were converted on October 1, 2025. Net income for the year, 1.2 million. So, kung gagawa tayo ng timeline, this is January 1. This is October 1 and this is December 31. Tama ba, class? Dito yung actual conversion. Tama? So sabi ko kanina, kapag basic EPS yung pinag-uusapan natin, actual na nangyari yung i-reflect natin sa computation. Basic EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Ano yung net income in the problem? Sabi dyan, 1.2 million. Tama? And then, meron tayong preferred dividends? Wala naman. So minus 0 over number of outstanding shares. Tama ba, class? Since may actual conversion, wave yung gagamitin natin. So computin natin yung wave. Beginning of the year, meron tayong 200,000 ordinary shares. Multiply natin by 12 over 12, that's 200,000. And then yung conversion, tama ba 100,000 yung conversion? Pero kinonvert mo siya October 1. October, November, December times 3 over 12. Makukuha mo dito, 100,000. Times 3 over 12, you have 25,000. Okay? So therefore, total natin is 225,000 yung wave natin. 225,000. 1.2 million divided by 225,000. Okay, basic EPS natin is 5.33. Okay, 5.30. Ang ginawa natin sa basic EPS, ni-reflect natin yung actual. Ano yung actual? Merong conversion no October 1. Kaya meron tayong 100,000 times 3 over 12. October, November, December. Kaya 3 over 12. Punta tayo sa diluted EPS. So, ganito gagawin ko dyan, class. Diluted EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Tama? Ngayon, meron tayong net income for 1.2 million. Add back natin yung interest expense. Pero this time, tama ba, class? Yung interest expense natin is from January 1 to October 1 lang. Kasi nung kinonvert mo, wala ka ng interest expense dito. Wala ka ng interest expense yan. Therefore, for 9 months lang yung interest expense natin. Does that make sense? Okay, so gagawin ko dyan. Yung computation ng interest expense natin, we have, okay, 5,000 na bonds. Multiply natin by 1,000 na face value. Multiply natin by 10% bonds times 70% kasi net of tax times 9 over 12 kasi from January 1 to October 1. Alright? So 5,000 times 1,000 times 0.1 times 70% times 9 over 12. Yung i-add back natin ng interest expense is 262,500. Over number of shares. Ano yung beginning natin? 200,000. Alright? And then, pa-plus natin yung, tama ba class? Anong nangyari dito? Yung conversion is, yung meron tayo, pwede siya i-convert into 100,000 shares. Alright? As if kinonvert noong January 1. So, ibig sabihin kung as if kinonvert siya noong January 1, 100,000 times 12 over 12 yan. Okay? So, 100,000 yan. Denominator mo dyan is 300,000. So, 1.2 million plus 262,500 divide by 300,000. Nakuha mo dito class 4.875. Ulitin ko. Sir, paano naging ganyan yung diluted EPS? Okay tayo sa net income. Walang problema. Given yan. Nag-add back tayo ng interest expense. Tama ba class? 9 over 12 yan. Kasi January 1 to September 1. 200,000 yun yung outstanding as of beginning of the year. Sir, bakit ito hindi mo times 9 over 12? Sabi mo sir, dapat comparable yan. Bakit ito hindi mo multiply by 9 over 12? Kung babalik tayo dun sa problem kanina, illustrative example number 9, kung maalala nyo, nag-times 6 over 12 ko dyan, nag-times 6 over 12 ko dyan. Pero bakit sir dito, 9 over 12, dito naman 12 over 12? Okay? Kasi class, ganito yung difference yan. Ito kasi in-issue siya July 1. Okay? So kaya pag as if kinonvert siya ng July 1, 6 over 12 yan. Okay? July to December. Ito naman kasi, in-issue siya January 1. Alright? So as if kinonvert siya ng January 1, so outstanding siya for 12 months. Kaya pag ganun, kapag in-issue siya January 1, okay? Wala ka ng 3 over 12 dyan. Okay? Or wala ka ng 9 over 12 dyan. Walang ganun. Okay? So 12 over 12 yan. Okay? So again, pag in-issue during the year, pro-rate mo yung denominator. Pag in-issue siya start of the year, wala kang ipo-rate sa denominator. Okay? 12 over 12 yan. Gets? Okay. So that's 4.875 for illustrative example number 10. Jump tayo sa main problem number 4. Okay? Yun yung related na bonds. Convertible bonds. Main problem number 4. Still bonds. Okay? Let's see. Question here is, what amount should it report in its 2021 diluted EPS? Okay. So tingnan natin class. So the given, on June 30, 2020, ingat ka sa date, Patrick Inc. issued 10,007% bonds at par. Okay? Each bond was convertible into 200 shares of common stock. On January 1, 2021, 10,000 shares of common stock were outstanding. The bondholders converted all the bonds on July 1. May actual conversion. Okay, July 1. So how much daw yung diluted EPS? Bigyan tayo ng income statement. Nakalagay income tax rate of 32%. Okay, 32. Net income is 34,000. So ganun gagawin ko dyan class. Main problem number 4. Gagawin ko dyan. So diluted EPS natin is net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income natin in the problem, nakalagay sa income statement, 34,000. Okay. Again, i-add back natin yung interest expense. So paano yung computation mo dyan, sir? Gagawin ko dyan. Tama ba? Meron tayong 20 sa first sentence, ha? Times 10,000. Multiply natin by 7%. Okay? And then, multiply natin by 62%. Sir, 68%, sorry. Sir, bakit 68%? Kasi yung tax rate is 32%. Alright? So, 68% yan. Multiply natin by 6 over 12. Okay? Sir, bakit 6 over 12? Tama ba, class? 2021 yung tanong. Tama? So, ibig sabihin, January 1 to January 1 to July 1, yung pinag-uusapan natin ng interest expense. Kasi 2021 yung tanong, tama? Kinonvert noong July 1. Kung gagawa ka ng timeline, this is January 1, July 1, December 31. Okay, so ito yung interest expense. As if kinonvert dito, so kailangan i-add back mo yan. Kaya 6 over 12 tayo. Right? So how much yan? 20 times 10,000 times 7% times 68% times 6 over 12, you get 4,760. That's 4,760. Over number of outstanding shares. Meron tayong, ilan ba yung outstanding shares dito? Meron dyan 10,000 shares. Okay, nasa yun? Alright, so third sentence. So January 1, 10,000 ordinary shares, okay, or common shares, plus what if actual nakit, what if as if converted siya, okay, at the start of the year, as if convert dito. So ang gagawin ko dyan, class, punta ka dun sa, okay, second sentence. Each bond was convertible into 200 shares of common stock. Ilan ba yung bonds? 20. Okay, 20 times natin sa 200, that's 4,000. So, meron tayong 4,000 dyan. So, denominator natin, 14,000. Take note, hindi ko na pre-rate. Okay? Kahit ba may actual conversion. Kasi, again, as if dito siya. Kinonvert. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, meron kang shares na 12 months. 12 over 12. Kailangan ko po pre-rate ng denominator kapag anong nangyari, ang issuance mo is during the year. Dito, ang issuance dito last year pa. Conversion lang yung nangyari this year. Okay? Kaya 12 over 12 yan. Sige. So, 34,000 plus 4,760. I-divide mo siya by 14,000. You have 2.77 letter B. Easy. Okay? So, ayan. Letter B. Okay, so, let's go to, saan tayo? The third type of dilutive security. Options or warrants. Okay? So, options or warrants, again, yun yung merong right yung shareholder to buy shares at a specified price. Ang tawag natin doon? Exercise or subscription price. Okay? Now, for options and warrants, according to PAS 33, ang i-apply natin dito class is the treasury share method. Treasury share method. Sir, treasury share. Tama ba pag sinabing treasury share, may buyback dyan? Okay? As if, again, hypothetical scenario naman, as if, iba-buyback natin yung shares. Alright? Now, the goal of treasury share method is to compute for shares, sulat mo to, that are issued for no consideration. Okay? Issued for no consideration. Okay? No consideration. Ibig sabihin parang ito yung libre na shares. Dahil ko na lang free shares. Again, ang goal natin in the treasury share method, as if buyback natin, kukumpute natin class how much o ilan yung shares na walang consideration or how much yung libre na shares. Okay? So basically, ganun yung treasury stock method. Okay, now, apply na natin para mas malinaw. Punta tayo sa illustrative example number 11. Illustrative example number 11. So, explain ko sa inyo class kung bakit ganito yung magiging process ng computation natin. Okay? Illustrative example number 11. Options. Compute for the basic and diluted EPS. GHI company has the following information for the entire year. You have net income and ordinary shares, 1 peso par. Employee stock options outstanding during the entire year. So, si employee pwede siya mag-exercise ng stock options. Option shares, yan yung ilang shares magbibili ni employees, no? 10,000. Exercise price or subscription price. Fair value of each share option. Later, pakita ko kung bakit gagamitin yan. Average market price and year-end market price. Ignore mo na yung year-end market price. Ang gagamitin mo for the treasury share method is the average market price. Pakita ko sa inyo class ha. Again, ang goal natin, kumpitin natin yung free shares. Libre na shares. Ganito yan. Lagay ko muna issued. Ilang shares yung i-issue natin sa mga employees? Again, as if. Basic EPS muna pala tayo class. No? Mamaya na yung diluted. Basic EPS muna. Again, pag basic EPS, actual na nangyari. Net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay, net income in the problem is, nasaan yan? Meron bang given? Yes, 1 million. Wala naman tayong preferred dividends. Number of outstanding shares, 100,000. Basic EPS natin, 10 pesos. Walang complication. Okay? Hindi naman in-exercise yung options so walang effect yan sa basic EPS. Because basic EPS, dapat yung actual na nangyari, yung i-reflect natin. Dito may konting complication yan, diluted EPS. Okay, so ang gagawin ko sa class, for diluted EPS, again, net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay, net income natin, 1 million. Wala tayong preferred dividends. Ito yung issue mo dyan, yung denominator, number of shares. Okay? Ganito gagawin ko yung class. Treasury share method. Paano sir yung treasury share method? Mag-i-issue tayo ng shares. Ilang class yung i-issue natin? Tama ba? 10,000 shares? As if i-exercise ni employees. Yun yan ha. Kasi as if approach eh. As if i-exercise ni employees or shareholders. How much yung i-issue natin? Ilang shares? 10,000. Iba-buyback natin yan. Magkano natin siya may i-issue? Tama ba class? I-issue natin siya for exercise price. Tama? Yun yung babayad sa atin ng employee. Tama? So how much yun? 140. Pero tandaan mo class, yung option, isusurrender din sa atin ng employee yan. Yung mismong option. Ibig sabihin, ang marireceive natin kay employee is the exercise price na cash, okay, yung cash, plus yung fair value ng option na 10 pesos. Nakuha niyan? So, leading ko. Ito yung option, okay? So, ako sa employee, pag bibili ko ng shares, magbabayad ako 140 pesos per share. Pero isusurrender ko rin yung option ko. Tama? Doon sa corporation. So, in effect, 150 talaga yung binabayad natin kay corporation. Okay? Pag given to. May mga instances hindi given to class ha. Pag hindi given yan, exercise price lang yung gagamitin mo. Okay, so, tama ba? 10,000 times 150. Okay, makukuha mo dyan is 1.5 million. Ngayon, tama ba? Tayo yung corporation, makaka-receive tayo ng 1.5 million from the employees. Treasury stock method or treasury share method, iba-buyback natin yan. Bibili natin yan. Ilan yung mabibili natin na shares from the 1.5 million? Gagamitin mo dyan yung average market price. Okay? So, kung 1.5 million yung cash natin na na-receive from the employees, and then 200 pesos yung average market price, ilan yung kaya nating bilhin? 1.5 million divided by 200, 7,500 shares. Ito yung treasury shares natin. Okay? Therefore, ang in-issue mo 10,000 shares. Binayback mo 7,500. Ibig sabihin yung difference sa 2,500, ang tawag natin dyan incremental shares. Okay? Parang libreng shares yan. Okay? Libre yan kasi in-issue mo 10,000, ang nabili mo lang 7,500. So, meron kang libre na shares na 2,500 na binigay dun sa mga employees. Yun yung ibig sabihin ng compute for shares that are issued for no consideration. Ito, walang consideration yan. Okay, kasi ang binayad sa'yo, 1.5. Bumili ka ng shares, 7,500 lang yung nabili mong shares. Therefore, yung 2,500, libre mong binigay sa employees yan. Parang ganun. Kuha niyan, lalagay mo sa denominator. Number of outstanding shares, 100,000, beginning. Okay? Plus, incremental shares na 2,500. So, ibig sabihin class, 1 million divided by 102,500. Okay? 102,500 yung denominator. You have 9.76. Okay? 9.76. Huwag kang malilito class ha. Okay? Issued minus treasury shares, incremental shares. Incremental shares, yun yung pupunta dun sa denominator. Paano ulit sir yan? Issued. Ito, given yan. 10,000 yung pwedeng bilhin ng employees. Times exercise price. Huwag mo kalimutan isama yung option kasi isusurrender din ng employees yan. May mga times na hindi given yan. Obviously, pag hindi given, exercise price lang. Yung 1.5 billion, yun yung cash na marireceive natin as corporation. Iba-buyback natin kasi treasury share method nga eh. I-buyback natin. Ano yung gagamitin mo? Average market price. Ang pwede natin i-buyback is 7,500 shares. 10,000 minus 7,500, 25. Incremental or free shares. Ayun, lagay mo siya dito. Ganyan lang siya. Ganyan yung diluted EPS for options. Isa pa para mas malinaw. Illustrative example number 12. What if yung options in-issue siya during the year? Okay. Sige, so basic EPS and diluted EPS. Pinnacle Company had the following share capital. Ordinary share capital, makita mo dyan class, 60,000 shares issued. Okay? On April 1, 2025, the entity issued 20,000 share options to employees, allowing them to purchase one ordinary share for each option, so 1:1, at 160. Tama ba class? Yung exercise price natin is 160. Okay? And then fair value of share of the option is 10. Again, 170 yung tututan mo yan. Okay, given yung fair value. The average market price was 250. Ending market price is 300. Ano gagamitin mo? Average or ending? Average. Parang ang assumption natin, iba-buyback natin yung treasury shares all throughout the year, kaya average. Net income was 3 million. Okay, basic EPS muna. Basic EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. How much yung net income in the problem? Net income, according to the last sentence, 3 million. Wala tayong preferred dividends. Number of shares, tingin ka dun sa line item, 60,000 shares issued. Yung nakalagay sa first item, 60,000. 3 million divided by 60,000, you get 50 pesos. Basic EPS is 50 pesos. Okay, doon tayo sa diluted EPS. Okay, net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay na tayo sa net income, 3 million. Okay? And then preferred dividends, wala mo preferred dividends sa problem, so issue na lang natin yung number of shares. Alright? Treasury share method. Tama ba class? Sabi dyan sa second paragraph, on April 1, the entity issued 20,000 share options. Gagawin ko dyan, mag-i-issue tayo ng 20,000 share options. How much yung ibabayad ng employee sa atin? Ito, na-compute natin earlier, 170. Okay? So 20,000 times 170, babayad ng employee sa atin, 3.4 million. Treasury share method, gagamitin natin yung cash na yan to buy back the shares. Ilan yung mababuyback natin? Divide mo sa average market price, so 250. 3.4 million divided by 250, ang pwede natin i-buyback is 13,600 shares. Ito yung treasury shares natin, 13,600. 20,000 minus 13,600, okay, you have 6,400. Okay? 6,400, ito yung incremental shares or ito yung free shares natin, incremental shares. Ibig sabihin, nag-issue tayo ng 6,400 shares to the employees na walang consideration. Libre, basically. Pero take note class, na in-issue natin yan April 1. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, pro-rate mo pa yan. April to December, that's 9 months. 6,400 times 9 over 12. Okay? You have 6,400 times 9 over 12. You get here 4,800. Tandaan mo class kapag during the year nag-issue, doon ka lang mag-pro-rate ng denominator. Okay? Ito, in-issue siya ng April 1. O, pro-rate mo siya. 4,800. So, ibig sabihin, denominator natin, pero tayong original 60,000 shares, plus yung incremental or yung free shares na na-compute natin na 4,800. Okay? So, compute natin class. 3 million over 64,800. Makukuha mo dyan 46.3. 46.3, this is our diluted EPS for number 12. Okay, punta naman tayo sa illustrative example number 13. What if? Okay, so lahat ng scenario na compute na natin for in our illustrative examples. What if, sir, mayroong exercise of options? Okay, may actual exercise. Sabi ko kanina, kapag basic EPS, yung actual na nangyari, yung i-reflect natin. Right? So let's see. Let's say the given. On January 1, Mr. Accounting Company had the following share capital. Ordinary share capital, 100 peso par. 100,000 shares issued, okay, 10 million. On January 1, the entity had also share options outstanding to purchase 50,000 ordinary shares at 120 pesos per share. Tama ba class? Yung exercise price natin is 120. Ha? Pwede daw bumili ng 50,000 shares. No value is assigned to the share option. Walang fair value yung share option. Okay? On April 1, all of the share options were exercised. On this date, the market price of ordinary share was 400 pesos. And then the entity reported net income of 5.5 million. Now, ganito gagawin ko dyan class. Basic EPS muna tayo. Basic EPS, net income, minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income natin in the problem is 5.5 million. Wala naman tayong preferred dividends. Okay? Number of outstanding shares natin, nagkaroon ng actual exercise. Therefore, wave yung gagamitin natin. Let's compute for wave. January 1, meron tayong 100,000 shares times 12 over 12. That's 100,000. And then, meron tayong, tama ba class? Pwede daw mag-exercise. Punta sa second paragraph. The entity had also share options outstanding to purchase 50,000 ordinary shares. 50,000. And then actual yan, tama? Kailan in-exercise? April 1 times 9 over 12, 50,000. Times 9 over 12, you have 37,500. Therefore, total niyan, 137,500. Huwag niyo class, so actual yung re-reflect natin, 137,500. 5.5 million divided by 137,500, makukuha mo dyan class is 40 pesos yung basic EPS natin. Let's go to diluted EPS. So, ganito gagawin ko dyan. Diluted EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay? Net income natin, 5.5 million. So, given. Denominator natin yung issue natin dito. Okay? So, ilan yung i-issue natin na shares to the employees? Tama ba kas? 50,000, right? So, 50,000. Now, how much yung exercise price natin? 120. So, problem yan. Take note, walang fair value yung share option. Pag walang fair value share option, obviously zero yun. Okay? So, exercise price lang. Times natin sa 120, marireceive natin cash from the employees, 50,000 times 120 is 6 million. Now, ito yung kakaiba dito, class. Kapag merong actual exercise, ang gagamitin mo, hindi yung average market price. Gagamitin mo yung actual market price kung kailan nag-exercise. Nakita mo dyan sa second to last sentence, the market price of ordinary share was 400 pesos on that date. Okay? Nung date doon nag-exercise, April 1, 400 pesos yung market price. Yun yung gagamitin mo sa treasury share method. Hindi yung average. Okay? So by default, kapag walang exercise, average. Kapag may exercise, yung actual market price. Divide mo by 400, 6 million divided by 400, pwede tayo bumili ng 15,000 treasury shares. Lagi ko dito, treasury shares, 15,000. Therefore, makukuha natin na incremental shares, 50,000 minus 15, 35,000. And don't forget na nagkaroon ng actual exercise noong April 1. Alright? So, April 1 yan. Therefore, ang gagawin natin, tingnan mo gagawin ko ha. Okay. Tama ba, class? Yung nireflect natin sa basic EPS is meron tayong 100,000. Okay, so parang ganito. Gagawin ang timeline para mas malinaw. So, meron tayong January 1, April 1, and, April 1, December 31. Okay? Tama ba, class? Dito nagkaroon ng actual exercise? Tama, may actual dyan. So, ang gagawin natin dyan, yung treasury share method natin, i-apply lang natin siya from January 1 to April 1. Okay? Because dito, from April 1 to December 31, na-compute natin earlier yan, yung 37,500. Nakuha niyan? So, ibig sabihin, kung January 1 to April 1 lang yan, 3 months lang yan. So, ang gagawin ko dyan, yung 35,000, ang gagawin ko dyan, multiply ko pa by 3 over 12. Okay? 35,000 times 3 over 12, you have 8,750. So, ganito gagawin ko sa denominator. Meron akong net income, 5.5 million. Yung 100,000, yan yung outstanding sa beginning of the year. Walang problema dyan. And then, from January 1 to April 1, yung treasury share method, which is 8,700. Okay? Or 8,750. Plus, from April 1 to December 31, yung 37,500 na actual. Okay? Plus 37,500. Ayun. So, tingnan natin. Ilan yung denominator natin na 100,000 plus 8,750 plus 37,500. Denominator natin is 146,250. 5.5 million divided by 146,250, you have 37.61. Answer natin, illustrative example number 13, 37.61. Okay. Sige. And then, double check ko lang, may na-miss pa tayo. So, okay na yan. Bonds, okay. And then, alright, so, let's move on to illustrative example number 14. Pakita ko lang, class, just in case na may magtanong about contingent shares. Okay. Pag nagtanong about contingent shares, alam natin kung paano sasagutin yan. Ano ibig sabihin ng contingent shares? Mag-i-issue ng shares, okay, kapag may criteria na na-meet yung entity. Okay? Contingent. Siyempre, kapag basic EPS, actual na nangyari. Kapag diluted EPS, as if na-meet lahat ng requirements. Ganun siya. Illustrative example number 14. Okay, so ABC Company provided the following information for the year ended December 31, 2025. Meron tayong net income na 5.9 million. Ordinary shares, 1 million. On January 1, an agreement related to a recent business combination provides for the issue of additional ordinary shares based on the following conditions. So pag na-meet yung conditions na ito, mag-i-issue ng shares. 50,000 additional shares for each new branch opened during 2025. Okay, so pag nag-open ng branch, 50,000 shares. Letter B, 1,000 additional shares for each 1,000 peso of net income in excess of 5 million for the year ended December 31. Tama ba kasi yung net income is 5.9 million? Tama? Okay. The entity opened 2 new branches, April 1, 2025 and other one on July 1, 2025. Tama ba actual na nangyari yun? Okay, so basic EPS muna tayo. Actual na nangyari. So basic EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income in the problem is 5.9 million. Wala naman tayong preferred dividends, number of shares. Compute natin yung weighted average number of shares. Tama ba, class? Yung beginning is you have 1 million ordinary shares according to the second line item times 12 over 12. And then meron tayong, punta sa last paragraph, the entity opened 2 new branches. One on April 1, other on July 1. Tama ba, class? 50,000 shares yung per branch. Tama? So 50,000 times yung April 1 muna times 9 over 12. April to December is 9. 50,000 times 6 over 12 kasi July to December. Okay, so 1 million. 50,000 times 9 over 12, we have 37,500. And 50,000 times 6 over 12 is 25,000. So okay, 1 million plus 37,500 plus 25,000, we have 1,062,500. Okay, so denominator natin, 1,062,500. 5.9 million net income divided by 1,062,500. Basic EPS natin, class, 5.55. Ano yung in-apply natin na concept? Pag basic EPS, actual. Asan yung actual dyan? Ito. Actual yan. Okay, doon naman tayo sa diluted EPS. As if na-meet lahat ng requirements at the start of the year. Alright, ganun siya. Diluted EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Compute natin. So, meron tayong net income na 5.9 million, tama? O, wala namang preferred dividends, so number of shares yung issue natin dito. Compute natin yung weighted average number of shares. 1 million beginning of the year times 12 over 12. Wala tayong problema dyan sa 1 million. Now, tama ba nag-open ang dalawang branch? As if nag-open sila start of the year. Okay? So, 50,000, yung first branch times 12 over 12 kasi nga start of the year. 50,000, second branch times 12 over 12 kasi nga start of the year. Right? Now, as if na-meet din yung requirement B. Okay? Na sabi dyan, 1,000 additional shares for each 1,000 peso net income kahit December 31, 2026 pa yan. Ang given sa atin is 2025. Okay lang yun. Again, as if na-meet yan. Okay? So, ang gagawin ko dyan, para ma-compute yan, meron tayong, tama ba, may 5.9 tayong net income. Okay? And then, in excess of 5 million daw, ibig sabihin na in excess pag sobra. Okay? For each 1,000, divide ko sa 1,000 yan. Oh, sorry. Yes, tama. For each 1,000, magbibigay tayo ng 1,000 ordinary shares. Okay? So, 5.9 million minus 5 million divided by 1,000 times 1,000, meron tayong 900,000 na i-issue na shares. Times 12 over 12, again, assumption, start of the year. Laging ka doon. Okay, so this is 1 million, this is 50,000, this is 50,000, and 900,000. Okay, so ilan yan? 1 million plus 50,000 plus 50,000 plus 900,000, you get 2 million. Okay, so that is 2 million. Lagyan natin sa denominator yan. 5.9 million divided by 2 million. 5.9 divided by 2 million, diluted EPS natin is 2.95. Okay, again, pag diluted EPS, puro hypothetical scenarios lang yan. Actually, kahit yung net income, hypothetical yan. Ginamit natin yung last year, 2025 na net income. So, ganyan gagawin mo, class, kapag contingent shares as if na-meet lahat ng requirements, okay, at the start of the year. Okay, so last concept na for EPS, tawag natin dito, class, is multiple dilutive securities. What if hindi lang isa-isa yung dilutive securities, okay? Magkakasama na. So, for illustrative example number 15, meron tayong convertible preference shares, convertible bonds, and may options sa isang problem. May multiple, okay? So, turo ko sa inyo ang paano yung class, ha? Illustrative example number 15. Dali lang yan, ako bahala. Compute for the following basic EPS and diluted EPS. Pinnacle Company reported the following information. Ordinary share capital, 110,000 shares. Okay, underline mo yun, 110,000. Convertible non-cumulative preference share capital, 20,000 shares. 10% convertible bonds payable, 2 million yung face value. Okay. Share options to purchase 60,000 shares at 15 pesos were outstanding. Tama ba, class, yung exercise price natin is 15 pesos. Lagyan mo dyan. Market price 25, average 20. Ito gagamitin mo. Market price or yung average? Okay, average, syempre 20 pesos. So, huwag mo pansinin yung 25 pesos na yan. The entity paid the annual dividend of 5 pesos on the preference share. So, tama ba, class, dun sa second line item, meron tayong 20,000 na preference shares. Okay. Multiply natin by 5 yung binayad. Therefore, meron tayong preferred dividends na 100,000. Tama ba? The preference shares are convertible into 40,000 ordinary shares. The 10% are convertible into 30,000 ordinary shares. Net income, 650,000. Income tax rate is 30%. Dami sinabi. Okay, basic EPS muna tayo. Basic EPS is equal to net income minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Net income in the problem is, nasa na yan? Net income nandun sa second to the last item. So, second to the last sentence, 650,000. Okay, minus preferred dividends ng 100,000. Wala naman tayong exercise ng kahit ano sa mga dilutive securities na yan. Over number of outstanding shares. Ano sa first item, meron tayong 110,000 na outstanding shares. 650,000 minus 100. Tama ba? This is 550,000. Okay, so numerator natin, 550,000. Kasi 650 minus 100. Divide natin by 110,000. Basic EPS natin, class, is 5 pesos. Okay, yung problema yan. Now, kapag diluted EPS and then meron tayong multiple dilutive securities, meron tayong ranking na mangyayari. Ano yung ranking natin? Okay, so again, kapag diluted EPS, ang goal natin is to show the lowest possible. Mas mataas yung rank natin kapag mas mababa yung EPS. Ano ibig sabihin nun, sir? Ganito yan. Okay, so, isa-isay natin. Start muna tayo with options. Okay, ano yung numerator natin sa options? Well, actually, kapag options, 0 yun, wala ka namang addition sa numerator, right? So, 0 yan. Oh, hindi, ulitin ko muna. Doon muna tayo sa preferred shares muna, okay? Para mas malinaw. Doon mo tayo sa convertible preference shares. Tama ba, class? Kapag kinonvert yung preference shares, wala kang dividends. Okay? So, yung numerator mo, dividends na 100,000. Preferred dividends, 100,000 over. Ilang shares yung may issue mo for the preference shares? Punta ka sa third paragraph. The entity paid annual dividend of 5 pesos on the preference shares. The preference shares are convertible into 40,000 ordinary shares. Tama ba, class? Yung preferred dividends mo, 100,000. Yan yung matatanggal sa numerator. Madadagdag sa denominator mo is 40,000. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, yung effect ng convertible preference shares, so the EPS is 100,000 divided by 40,000, you have 2.5. I-rank natin. Yun muna yung sa preference shares. Doon tayo sa convertible bonds. Okay, compute natin, class, yung interest expense na i-add back natin. Yun yung numerator natin. Okay, so, punta ka doon sa second item. Meron tayong, third item, 2 million pesos, tama ba, yung convertible bonds natin. Multiply natin by 10%, yan yung rate. After tax natin, times 70%. 2 million times 0.1 times 0.7, you have 140,000. Yun yung interest expense ang i-add back natin. Punta ka dun sa third to the last sentence. The 10% bonds are convertible into 30,000 ordinary shares. Yun yung madadagdag sa ordinary shares natin. 140,000 divided by 30,000, you have 4.67. Meron tayong 2.5. Okay? Meron tayong 4.67. Yung last one, options. Actually, sa options, 0 yung numerator mo kasi wala ka namang madadagdag sa numerator mo doon or babawas. Automatic 0 na yan. Okay? Denominator natin, syempre, treasury share method. Punta ka dun sa second paragraph. Share options to purchase 60,000 shares. I-issue natin 60,000 shares. How much yung ibabayad sa atin ng employees or ng stockholder? 15 pesos. Tama yung exercise price. Nakalagay, share options to purchase 60,000 shares at 15 pesos. So, yun yung exercise price. Marireceive natin na cash. 60,000 times 15, 900,000. I-buy back natin using average market price. How much yung average? 20 pesos. Divide by 20, 45,000. Okay, treasury shares natin, 45,000. Tama ba class? Issued, 60,000. Treasury shares, 45. Therefore, yung incremental or yung free shares natin, 15,000. Okay. So, therefore, 0 over 15,000. Okay, yung magiging computation natin for options. 0 over 15,000, obviously, that's 0. Okay? Actually, class, for options, laging 0 yan. Sabi ko kanina, may ranking. Ano yung priority natin? Lowest possible EPS, pababaan. Sabi sabihin, laging options 1 yan. Okay, rank 1 yan. Next, ano mo sa baba? 2.5 or 4.67? O rank 2 itong convertible preference shares, rank 3 yung convertible bonds. Okay? Next, gagamit tayo ng table. Right? So, ito yung net income natin. Ito yung numerator. Over number of outstanding shares, this is our EPS. So, tingnan nyo yung format na gagawin ko ha. Start mo tayo with basic EPS. Basically, yung net income, yun yung numerator natin. 550,000 over number of outstanding shares na 110,000 na compute natin earlier, 5 pesos yung basic EPS natin. And then, saka natin i-incorporate yung ranking natin. Dumawa tayo sa options. Tama ba ka sa options? Madadagdag sa numerator mo ay 0. Madadagdag sa denominator mo 15,000. Right? Therefore, 550,000 plus 0, 550,000. 110,000 plus 15,000, this is 125,000. 550,000 divided by 125,000, you have 4.4. Tapos tayo sa options. Punta tayo dun sa, tapos tayo sa options ha. Convertible preference shares. How much madadagdag sa numerator mo? 100,000. How much madadagdag sa denominator mo? 40,000. Okay, add natin yan. 550 plus 100, that's 650,000. 125 plus 40, that's 165,000. Okay, 650,000 divided by 165,000, you get EPS natin, 3.94. Last one, convertible bonds. How much madadagdag? Dun sa numerator natin, 140,000. How much madadagdag sa denominator natin? 30,000. Okay, add natin, 650 plus 140. You have 790,000. Denominator natin, 165 plus 30, 195,000. Divide natin yan, 790,000 divided by 195,000, 4.05. Okay, so yun yung effect natin. Pero, ingat ka dyan. Sabi natin kanina, yung diluted EPS shows the lowest possible EPS. From 5, bumaba ng 4, 4.4. Bumaba ng 3.94. Uy, tumaas to 4.05. Tumaas ulit. Again, lowest possible. Ano yung final answer mo dito? Diluted EPS is 3.94. Doon ka mag-iingat. Okay? Baka sagot mo 4.05. Pag tumaas, huwag mo sasagot yun. Kasi again, lowest possible. Gusto natin pakita sa ordinary shareholders. Ito yung worst case scenario nyo. Mag-earn kayo ng 3.94 pesos per share. Okay? Ayan, that's our last illustrative example. Now, isa pa. May multiple dilutive securities pa rin. Last problem na to class na. So, let's go to main problem number 5. Ganun pa rin. Yung magiging process natin. Pero dito, medyo mas complicated kasi merong actual exercise na nangyari or conversion. Tignan natin kung ano yung magiging computation. Okay? Pero same format ang gagawin natin. Let's take a look at the last problem, main problem number 5. Sige. Question number 1, what is the amount of basic EPS? Question number 2, what is the amount of diluted EPS? An entity reported the following information on January 1. Ordinary share capital, 800,000 shares. Preference share capital, 50,000 shares. 12% bonds payable. The preference share capital is 10% cumulative and convertible into 100,000 ordinary shares. Tama ba class? Yung preferred dividends natin, compute natin. Preferred dividends, meron tayong 50,000 na preference shares. Multiply natin by, preference shares natin is 2.5 million total amount. Times natin sa 10%, 250,000 yung preferred dividends natin. Okay, sulat ko lang. Dividends on preference shares are in arrears for 2 years. Wala tayong pakialam dyan. Basta alam lang natin, current year dividends lang. Okay, 250,000. The 12% bonds are convertible into 80 ordinary shares for each 1,000 bond. And exercise share options to purchase 90,000 ordinary shares at 20 pesos per share were outstanding at the beginning and ending of 2021. The average market price, 30 pesos. Market price on December 2021, 40 pesos. Siyempre, yung average o 30 pesos yung gagamitin natin. And then, nagkaroon ng, May 1, nag-issue, and so on and so forth. Doon muna tayo sa basic EPS. Basic EPS, net income, minus preferred dividends over number of outstanding shares. Okay, net income natin in the problem is, meron ba given? Yes, doon ka sa last item, last sentence. Net income is 5 million. Okay, 5 million over, minus preferred dividends, tama, na-compute natin earlier, over number of outstanding shares, which is weighted average, compute natin. Yung wave, beginning of the year, meron tayong 800,000 shares doon sa first item, times 12 over 12. And then May 1, tingin ka doon sa baba. Okay, May 1 issued 60,000 ordinary shares, 60,000 times 8 over 12 kasi May to December. And then, converted or purchased 100,000. So, treasury shares yan, 100,000 times ilan yan? July 1, so 6 over 12. Okay, negative yan. And then, don't forget na nakalagay converted bonds with face amount of 2 million. Okay, may conversion. So, 2 million, punta ka dun class sa second paragraph, last sentence. The 12% bonds are convertible into 80 ordinary shares for each 1,000 peso bond. So, gagawin ko, for each 1,000 peso, merong 80 na ordinary shares. So, ilan yan? 2 million. Divide by 1,000 times 80, you have 160,000 ordinary shares. 160,000, kailan kinonvert? October, November, December, 3 over 12. Okay, 800,000 times 12 over 12, you have 800,000. 60,000 times 8 over 12, you have 40,000. 100,000 times 6 over 12, that's negative 50,000. And 160,000 times 3 over 12, you have 40,000. Compute natin yung weighted average, 800,000 plus 40,000 minus 50 plus 40,000, you have 830,000. Lagyan natin sa denominator, 830,000, weighted average number of shares, 5 million minus 250,000 divided by 830,000. Final answer, basic EPS, 5.72, letter C. Next, diluted EPS, i-rank natin. Okay? Start muna with options. Again, pag options, 0 yung numerator mo. Okay? Kaya lagi number 1 yung rank ng options kasi 0 lagi yan. Okay? And then, compute natin yung incremental shares for options. So, punta ka dun sa third paragraph. And exercise share options to purchase 90,000 ordinary shares. So, i-issue natin 90,000 shares. How much natin may issue yan? 20 pesos per share. Yun yung exercise price. 90,000 times 20, marireceive natin is 1.8 million. Ipambibili natin yan ng shares. Divide mo sa average, which is 30 pesos per share. Treasury shares natin, 1.8 million divided by 30, 60,000. Okay, so ito yung treasury shares, 60. Ibig sabihin, yung incremental or yung free shares natin, 30,000 pesos. Oh, sorry, 30,000 shares. 0 over 30,000, obviously, 0 yung options natin. Yan laging rank 1 yan. Let's go to the preferred shares. Okay, preferred shares. Punta ka dun sa second paragraph. Pero alam natin yung preferred dividends natin, 250,000. Alam natin yung numerator natin. And then sabi dyan, second paragraph, convertible into 100,000 ordinary shares. 250,000 divided by 100,000, that's 2.5. Okay? And then, punta tayo dun sa bonds, convertible bonds. Ito may konting complication, no? Kasi nagkaroon ng conversion, eh. Tama? Nagkaroon ng conversion no October 1. Tignan natin. Tama ba meron tayong interest expense, yung numerator natin, over yung number of shares. So, na-convert. Dito tayo sa numerator. So, class, tama ba yung bonds natin, meron tayong 5 million na face value. Okay? I-divide natin into 2 yan. Yung 3 million yan, outstanding all throughout the year. Yung 2 million, yun yung kinonvert noong October 1. Tingin ka dun sa second to the last sentence, sa baba, nag-convert ka ng 2 million. Okay? Ibig sabihin, outstanding lang siya 9 months. Hiwalay ko i-compute yung interest expense. Doon mo tayo sa outstanding for 12 months. 3 million times. Ilang percent yung rate ng bonds? 12%. Multiply natin by 70% para net of tax times 12 over 12 kasi January to December. Hindi naman natin kinonvert yung 3 million. 3 million times 12% times 70%, you get 252,000. Ngayon, doon tayo sa 2 million. Okay? Which is kinonvert natin October 1. 2 million times 12% times 70% para net of tax times January to October 1, 9 over 12. 2 million times 12% times 0.7 times 9 over 12, you get 126,000. 252,000 plus 126,000, yung interest expense na i-add back natin is 378,000. Okay, ito na yung most difficult na diluted EPS computation. Okay, so pag nag-gets nyo, okay na kayo dyan. Denominator, ilan yung shares na i-issue natin? Well, as if convert natin lahat yan. Okay, so 5 million, as if convert natin at the start of the year, i-divide natin by 1,000. Tama ba class? 80 shares, 80 ordinary shares per 1,000. Tama? So 5 million divided by 1,000 times 80, 400,000. Yung ma-convert natin na shares. Kaya lang class, sa basic EPS natin, na-consider na natin yung actual conversion, which is 40,000. Alright, so ang gagawin ko dyan, 400,000 minus 40,000. You have 360,000. Lagay ko dito, 360,000. Kasi na-consider mo na yun. Okay? May actual conversion kasi, tama? Na-consider mo na yung 40,000. So, i-minus mo siya. Babalikan natin later yan. 378,000 divided by 360,000, you have 1.05. I-rank natin. Again, options, laging rank 1 yan. Mas mababa yung bonds, rank 2. Next is preferred shares. Okay, gamitin natin yung table natin. Net income. And then, we have ordinary shares. And then, we have our EPS. Okay, basic EPS muna. Tama ba? Basic EPS natin ito. Numerator mo, 5 million minus 250,000, 4,750,000. i-divide natin by 4,750, divide natin by 830,000 ordinary shares. Na-compute natin is 5.72. Again, yung first item mo laging yung basic EPS. Punta tayo sa options. Again, options, 0 madadagdag yan sa numerator, 30,000 sa denominator, 4,750,000, and then 830 plus 30, 860,000. 4,750,000, divide by 860,000, mo-compute mo dyan class, 5.52. Tama? So, 4,750,000 divided by 860,000, 5.52. Next, dun tayo sa rank 2, which is the bonds. Sa bonds natin, 378,000, yung numerator natin, denominator natin is 360,000. Okay, kaya sinabi ko kanina class, no? Ito, baka nandito ka dito, sir, bakit minus pa yung 40,000 na yan? Kasi class, yung nag-start tayo sa 830. Okay, which is ito. And nandun yung 40. So, pag di mo minus, double count ka. Okay? So, 4,750,000 plus 378,000, you have 5,128,000. 860 plus 360,000, you have 1,220,000. 5,128,000 divided by 1,220,000, you have 4.20. That's one. Tingnan natin kung dilutive yung preferred shares na yan. By the way, class, yung term, kanina di ba, naalala mo sa illustrative example number 15, tumaas bigla. Okay? Pababa, and then tumaas. Ang tawag doon, anti-dilutive. Okay? Pababa lang, dilutive yan. So, tingnan natin kung dilutive yung preferred shares or anti-dilutive. Okay? So, effect niya, 250,000 sa numerator. Sa denominator is 100,000. So, tingnan natin. 5,128,000 plus 250,000, you have 5,378,000. Denominator natin, 1,220 plus 100, 1,320,000. Okay? 5,378,000 divided by 1,320,000, you have 4.07. So from 5.72 bumaba, ng 5.52, bumaba na naman ng 4.2, bumaba na naman ng 4.07. So dilutive yung preferred shares natin. Final answer, 4.07, letter C. Okay, ayan. Double check ko lang class ha kung nasagutan natin lahat. I think nasagutan naman natin lahat. Okay. Convertible preference shares, okay. And then, bonds, okay siya. Multiple ordinary shares. Alright, let's go to the theory question. So, bilis lang class. Number 1, earnings per share disclosures are required for, sabi ko kanina, publicly listed entities or public entities, mga listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange, letter A. Number 2, when EPS is computed, dividends on preferred stock are, minus natin, net income minus preferred dividends over number of shares, letter D, subtracted, because they represent earnings to preferred shareholders. Because ang gusto natin class, again, yung EPS, ordinary shareholders lang yan. Yung numerator mo, pag dineduct mo yung preferred dividends, yan yung income available to ordinary shareholders. Number 3, EPS is calculated before accounting for which of the following items? Before accounting for ordinary dividends. Boy, okay? Because again, ito, pang ordinary shares yan. Alright? Yung ibang choices kasi, minority interest, wala yan. C, preferred dividend. Nakalagay, before accounting. After accounting for preferred dividends. Letter D, taxation after tax kasi net income yan. So yung C and D, after yan. Yung boy, yung before. Alright? Kaya boy for number 3. Under PAS 33, the weighted average number of shares for all periods shall be adjusted for, punta ka sa dog, any change in the number of ordinary shares without change in resources. Ano example nun? Stock split and stock dividends. Like, increase yung shares mo, pero walang consideration, walang cash consideration. Therefore, walang change in resources. Yun yung ibig sabihin ng resources, cash. Dog yan. Again, retroactive yung effect kapag may stock split and stock dividends. 5. In computing weighted average number of shares, when a stock dividend or stock split occurs, the additional shares are, again, nagre-retroact yan, as if earliest period. Letter D. Okay, dog. Considered outstanding at the beginning of the earliest year, kaya retroactive yung effect niyan. Number 6, the EPS computation that is forward-looking and based on assumptions about future transactions, diluted EPS, as if approach, or ito yung mga hypothetical scenarios natin. 7, when computing diluted EPS, what is the denominator in the computation? Weighted average number of shares. Dog, weighted average number of shares plus all other potentially dilutive securities. Siyempre, ano yung mga dilutive securities? Ayun, tatlo na. Convertible preference shares, convertible bonds, and options. Number 8, potential ordinary shares do not include share warrants or options. Kamukha lang yan. Yes. Share options? Yes. Letter C yung mali dyan. Okay? Financial liabilities or equity instruments, including preference shares that are not convertible. Dapat convertible. Okay? So, do not include letter C. Letter D, shares which should be issued upon the satisfaction of certain conditions, yun yung contingent shares. Kasama rin yan. Number 9, in determining EPS, interest expense net of tax on convertible debt should be added back. Okay, boy. Added back to net income for diluted EPS. Number 10, in determining basic EPS, dividend on non-convertible cumulative preferred stock should be kapag cumulative, whether declared or not. Kasi pag hindi dineclare, magiging dividends in arrears. Babayaran mo rin yan. Okay, letter A for number 10. Number 11, under PAS 33, contingent shares are treated as outstanding and included in satisfact computation if the condition is satisfied for, pag contingent shares as if na-satisfy lahat at the beginning of the year. Dog. Basic EPS from the date of the condition satisfied and diluted EPS from the beginning of the year or date of agreement if later. 12. In computing EPS, a method of recognizing the use of proceeds that would be obtained upon exercise of options, treasury stock or treasury share method. Letter C for number 12. 13. In applying the treasury stock method of computing diluted EPS, when it is appropriate to use the average market price. Actually, letter C yung sagot natin dito, class. No? 13. When the average market price is higher than exercise price. So yung stock price, dapat mas mataas sa exercise price yan. Bakit? For example, 120 pesos yung stock price, 100 pesos yung exercise price. Siyempre, i-exercise mo yan kasi makakamura ka. Tama? Kapag mas mababa yung stock price, huwag mo i-exercise. Bumili ka na lang at stock price. Kunyari, 90 pesos to, huwag mo i-exercise. So, bilhin mo na lang at 90. Kaya sagot dito, class, letter C, when the average market price is higher than the exercise price. Kasi yun yung scenario na i-exercise siya ng employees or ng mga shareholders. 14. When there are two convertible securities. Okay, yung multiple dilutive securities. Ano yung pipili natin? Letter D. Smaller earnings per share. Kaya laging options yung number 1 natin. Okay, yung ranking natin, kung ano yung pinakamababa. Okay, dog for number 14. And number 15, which of the following is true? Statement 1. EPS amounts should not be presented if they are negative. False yan. Alam natin yung loss per share, na-compute tayo earlier, pinapresent din natin yan. So false yung 1. Yung number 2, earnings per share calculated for discontinued operation should be presented. Actually, pinapresent din natin yan. Okay? Yung EPS, pinapresent mo siya for continuing operations and for discontinued operations. Ganun yung presentation yan. Kapag may discontinued operations, ganun yung presentation. So number 1 is false kasi pinapresent pa rin natin yung basic loss per share. Number 2 is true. Which of the following statement is true? Letter B, 2 only. Okay, so that's the end of our discussion on earnings per share.